Okay, today on the show, we have Toby Fernie from Coldwell Banker in Monterey, California. Let me tell you a little bit about Toby. Toby started his real estate career in Boston while studying at Boston College, became a realtor in Boston for 5 years. After that, he switched careers and spent 10 years teaching elementary school in Boston, but not just Boston, also Panama, Spain, Singapore, and California. Now, close to 4 years ago, he decided to re-enter the real estate field full-time, and he now works at Coldwell Banker in Monterey. As a former teacher, he's made it his goal to help as many local educators find affordable housing to prevent teacher turnover in his community. He's helped over 20 employees of Monterey schools purchase a home in the last 2 years. Now, while he helps clients, of course, outside of teachers purchase and sell homes too, his proudest accomplishment in Monterey, California is one of, working with teachers, because it is one of the most expensive and exclusive counties in the entire country. So he is trying to solve a problem that is very serious, which is how do we get educators to be able to afford housing in this super expensive area? And that is why we are so excited to have him on the show. Please visit Toby at his website, which is livinginmontereycalifornia.com. Toby, welcome to the show.
DJ, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
Well, we are, well, thank you. That's very nice. And I'm such a big fan of your whole mission and niche. I was actually just telling the couple of the other guys here in the office, I said, because I do interviews all the time and I rarely go around saying, I got this really interesting interview coming up, because they probably don't want to hear about it to begin with, but also it's not usually ever, sometimes it's a lot of the same stories over and over. But we were really intrigued by you in particular because of this problem that I never thought about, which we're going to get into, which is how do you keep teachers wanting to stay in areas that are largely unaffordable or certainly more expensive than what maybe their compensation would allow for. But before we get to that, definitely want to hear a little bit about your story. Of course, we just told a little bit about it, but can you tell us a little bit about your journey, from Boston all the way to Monterey?
Absolutely. So I started back in Boston College. A friend of mine,
Sure.
He was an upperclassman, and he had been doing real estate for a number of years there. And the way that housing works at Boston College, most people only get 3 years of housing. So every single person, for the most part, has to go off campus for at least 1 year. So most people, go off campus during their junior year. And it's one of those things where, there's about 10 different streets where people were looking for houses and apartments. And so I got started doing real estate there, did real estate for about 5 years at the office there, mostly rentals, but then also got into some sales as well, as I started my teaching career for a couple of years in Boston before doing some international teaching.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think Boston oftentimes, outside of the people that live there that know this, of course, but for the rest of us, we hear a lot about Southern California and even Northern California, and of course, New York and some other areas like that as being, of course, very expensive. Boston often gets overlooked, and it is one of the most expensive places to live, certainly buying a place, but also even renting. It's so insane there. So I imagine, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh, you actually were already in one of the more challenging, cities to sort of find housing for people, and now you're, of course, doing a very similar thing. But you were a teacher, and you got to teach not just in this country, but you went to some other places, including you went to Central America, you went to Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and can you tell us a little bit about those travels?
Yeah. So my main goal after I had finished college and was teaching in Boston was I really wanted to get fluent in Spanish. So I went to a teaching conference with a company called Search Associates, and that was in Boston. And schools from all over the world come in and do interviews with teachers there. So when I started out, I only applied for Spanish speaking countries, ended up getting a job in Panama and teaching there for 2 years. It was at a time I was young, no kids, no mortgage payment, anything like that. So I wanted to travel. My parents were thankfully able to help my brother and I do some travel with them when we were kids. So, we got the travel bug from them. I studied abroad in Italy when I was in college. And so I was always interested in wanting to travel again and do some work abroad too. So started for 2 years in Panama and got pretty good at Spanish when I was there and wanted to keep, improving my Spanish. I've always kind of been interested in Italy and Spain, that part of the world. So I went and taught in Valencia, Spain for 3 years. These were all at international or American schools. So it was teaching in English to students that were, either English speakers or wanting to learn English. And then I did 1 year teaching in Singapore before coming back and teaching at the International School of Monterey, which is what brought me to California and eventually, how I transitioned back into real estate here in Monterey.
Wow. Well, I was, when you were mentioning Singapore, and this is really off topic, but I'll just really quickly mention it. I actually got a chance I was in Singapore just coincidentally about, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago during Chinese New Year. And I was visiting, I was on a trip to Bali at the time. And on the way sort of back, stopped over in Singapore for three nights or 4 nights. And of course, that's such an amazing city because it's the cleanest. I think it's still considered the cleanest city in the world,
Yeah.
or certainly one of, because they have very strict rules about littering and things of that nature. Of course, everyone knows about gum and all of that, but I remember Singapore being a very exclusive, seemingly, probably challenging place to live as well. But I remember when I was there for Chinese New Year, which was really cool, just coincidentally was there during that time. It was like 1 million people in the streets. It was the most behaved group of people I've ever witnessed. And I went, boy, nobody's like throwing bottles and screaming and it's like, oh, they're not allowed to do that. That's right. And I thought, boy, maybe some of those rules might be helpful over here. But it was the most polite. It was the largest polite New Year's Eve celebration I have ever been a part of. And it was really neat. I loved Singapore. It was fun. I don't think I could afford to live there, but it was really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's expensive too, but that's one of the things I love about travel, right? Is getting those cultural experiences to,
Yeah.
and you ended up in, Chinese New Year in Singapore and,
it's cool.
it's got, it's once in a lifetime experience to do things like that. Right. So,
Yeah.
I'm glad to be back in the States and love it here in Monterey, but, I would, cherish those memories that I have from the time working and teaching abroad.
Have you curious about being bilingual, which I'm assuming your Spanish is still quite strong, being that you teach at an international school as well. Do you work with Spanish speaking clients? Are you fluent enough to be able to meet their needs?
Yeah. The interesting thing about my Spanish was I never really did much, formal schooling where I had, vocabulary and verbs and practice like that. So most of the Spanish that I knew was more conversational.
Sure.
But when I came back here, that was certainly an area, I wanted to be able to work with Spanish speaking students, parents that were Spanish speaking. And it's certainly something that I try to incorporate into my business, working with Spanish speaking clients who are looking to purchase homes. It was certainly a bit of a learning process to learn all of the specific vocabulary in Spanish when it comes to, mortgages and buying homes and the contract and things like that. But certainly feel comfortable working with Spanish speaking clients. And there's a lot of people in the area that are looking to purchase homes, whether it's, here in Monterey or other, the surrounding towns that are Spanish speakers.
Yeah, what a great tool to have as well, to be able to communicate with non-natively English speaking people. But what I am most interested in learning about is this amazing niche that you've carved out. And I know it's not exclusive to your business; you do other things too. But my mom was a teacher, so I can really appreciate the struggle of this, which is Toby had a very unique struggle, or sorry, not you particularly, but teachers in the Monterey area. And if you've ever been to the Monterey County area, you know just how beautiful and gorgeous and expensive it is. The challenge, of course, being how do teachers live there and continue to work there? And apparently, there's a real issue in that county to keep teachers there because it's just so cost prohibitive. And you decided to sort of look into that and figure out how do we reduce turnover, how do we keep these teachers happy in their homes here, and being able to live within their means, in an area where I wouldn't think most of us could live within our means. I think that is such an interesting problem, but it's a problem that I've never heard talked about. And I love the fact that that's your niche. So do you mind just giving us a little primer on sort of what the problem is and how you've started working with clients to solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first came back to Monterey, it was my 10th year of teaching. So I actually, started, there's steps for teachers where, each year your salary will go up. And I was on step 10, being my 10th year as a teacher. And, being new to the area, I was renting a 1-bedroom apartment, not, anything that was extravagant. And the salary that I was earning was not enough money for me to live here. I
Yeah.
was losing, hundreds of dollars every month just on cost of living. And so, I knew it was something that wouldn't be sustainable for me moving forward, which was, in part why I switched back into working with real estate. And when I started real estate, a lending partner of mine who I've worked with almost exclusively for the last 3 or 4 years. I mentioned to him that this was something that I was really passionate about, wanting to help teachers. Teacher turnover is a serious problem when it comes to student learning,
Sure.
staff, getting to know one another, getting to know the curriculum. It's difficult for teachers. It's difficult for administration. So it's really impacts the entire community. So when I was speaking with my lending partner, I mentioned to him, I'd love to be able to do something that can help teachers afford to live around here. And there was, unfortunately, due to COVID, the funding's not available, but there was a down payment assistance program that was available for teachers, firefighters, police officers in the entire state of California. And it was something that I, as a teacher, had never heard of. None of my friends who were teachers and my former colleagues had ever heard of it. So I kind of made it my mission and my goal to share this information out with people who are interested in purchasing homes. And that's kind of how I started here in real estate, was working primarily with teachers. And, I still is a big part of the business and clients that I like to work with and help, because, I'm a former teacher, and I am passionate about helping people in that field, which I think, really connects to and relates with my clients.
Yeah, it really does. And I imagine that had to be a really interesting moment, to hear from a lender something that you as a teacher had never heard, and also your colleagues in the education profession didn't know about either, or at least the ones you spoke to weren't as familiar. And I suspect a lot of the agents, the realtors in your area, also probably are somewhat unfamiliar with, which is like such a great opportunity to educate customers, or clients, future customers, about sort of what this is and how this works. And I've always said that, well, it's not something, a brilliant thought I've come up with, but I've said a lot on the show, and other agents have said the same thing, is you really need a great lending partner, because if you have a great relationship with somebody who's really comprehensive and knows, sort of knows the different options for financing, oftentimes agents are just not as up to date on those, some of those, different, grants and different programs that make it affordable for veterans, or in this case, teachers, which you said, at the moment is not being offered because of COVID. But, so how did you then, but you still have an education problem, right? You still have, how do I get people to know about this, right? Because they don't know what they don't know. So how did you go about educating the educators about this program? What was sort of the process there of saying, hey, there's this thing that you don't know about that exists? What was the way that you were able to share that information?
Yeah, so I tried to incorporate my, past and history as a teacher, and I started doing a home buying seminar for educators. And I was lucky enough to get connected with Monterey schools, and the superintendent and the communications director there were fantastic. And they are passionate about helping their teachers and
Sure.
keeping good teachers in the area too. So we started doing about every 3 months, 3 or 4 months, we do a home buying seminar, and it's for the entire Monterey staff. And so I started with the lender that I mentioned. The two of us do the presentation together. I do more so the real estate side, talking about the difficulties with increasing rents around here, increasing costs of homes. They've gone up about 8 to 10% a year since
Oh,
2008, and
amazing.
last year they went up about 30%. So if you
Incredible.
look at the rising cost of homes and then also the rising cost of rent every month, it is one of those kind of you're in trouble in both directions, right?
Yeah.
Because the cost of rent might be cost prohibitive if it keeps going up, and then a number of years from now, teaching salaries don't often keep pace with the cost of living. So
Right.
I more so did the real estate side of it, and then my lending partner, as you mentioned, so important. I think it's the most important partnership that you can have as a realtor, to be able to share that if we're working with buyers. And so he did the lending side of it, talked about how do you get yourself pre-approved, what's that process look like? And we were shocked to find out the number of people that came to our seminar who just assumed that they couldn't afford to buy a home, that they had
Oh,
they
of
had
course. Yeah.
yeah, that they had never gone through the pre-approval process to see if they could afford to buy a home. So,
Sure.
our message there typically is, we would encourage you to just go through the pre-approval process, see if you have the proper credit score, enough money for a down payment. And for many of the teachers who we've worked with, if it's a single teacher, dual income, two teachers working together, or maybe it's one teacher, who is partners with somebody who's not a teacher. A lot of those people left the seminars with the confidence that, yeah, this is something that we've wanted for a long time, and we can make it happen.
And it really, what I'm so impressed with is you identified a problem that was even greater than the teachers themselves finding housing, which of course is the most obvious problem. But this actually is a bigger problem even for administration, who now has to constantly hire, restaff, reteach the processes of a particular school district or school itself. And you're able to come to them and say, I think I might be able to help you with your problem, and at the same time help teachers with their own housing problems. And I could only imagine that those kind of phone calls to be able to say, hey, can I come into this school or this district and do these seminars? That's a pretty attractive offer for the administration to hear. They're like, oh good, somebody's on our side, somebody's helping us, versus I am sure you were not the first realtor to ever call them and say, I would love to do a first time home buyer seminar for your teachers. I think with your particular background, and also you're solving even a different problem, and on top of housing for teachers is keeping them wanting to stay in the area. I imagine that had to be pretty well received by administration, or am I wrong? And you had to sort of keep knocking on the door until they let you in.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. So for Monterey schools, the response from the superintendent and the communications director was almost immediate. I think I got an email back and 10 minutes later, and they said, yes, we've been looking for something like this for a very long time.
Yeah.
We do care about the well-being of our teachers outside of just the profession, right? It's, you have to be able to live here. You have to be able to afford to live here. It's not just a matter of, going to work every day, or you're going to find a different profession, or you're going to find somewhere else to live, right? So it was a win-win situation in the fact that it was a benefit to the teachers to learn about this. It was a benefit to the school district to start doing the seminar and show this is something that we care about, we're looking out for our teachers. It was also beneficial to me as a new realtor to kind of have a group of people to get in front of and share my story. And I kind of speak teacher, if you will. And so I think it helped to be a former teacher and say, I get it. I was in your shoes 4 years ago and thinking, can I afford to ever buy a house here? Can I afford to live here? Do I need to find a different area to live, a different job to do? And being a teacher, it's helpful to be able to explain this, to other teachers and help them understand the process too. Unfortunately, I have reached out to a lot of the districts in the area, not just Monterey, since I do serve some of the other areas, and that's been a bit more of a challenge and a struggle.
Sure.
Either not getting responses or following up 5 to 10 times before I hear back from somebody. And there's actually somebody whose role, I won't mention the school district, but their role, the title is teacher retention. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, we have this program that's been really successful for Monterey. We'd love to run it in your district too. And the response that I got back was, no, thanks, not interested. So, I think, if people see the benefit of it and how it's, looking out for teachers, but sometimes people just kind of get stuck in the day-to-day, right? And they're very busy. Teachers are very busy. Administration,
Sure.
They're very busy too.
Sure.
But yeah, I've tried to reach out to a lot of different districts, and I wish it was something that every district all across California had.
Well, and this problem isn't specifically, regulated to, or relegated rather, to just educators, right? There's a lot of different professions that are going to struggle with a similar issue, which is how do we keep our employees here, close enough to where they are willing to commute in, to where they can still have a decent standard of living. And oh yeah, we happen to be in this like super, expensive county. So for all of our listeners who think, well, I'm not a former teacher, and I don't have this particular situation that I could really solve for. Oh, there's lots of professions that have this problem, and this is something that what I would encourage. And I'm sorry to interject in the middle of Toby doing such a great job, but I would encourage you to talk to some lending partners and really say, hey, what programs exist out there right now that would help people who might not maybe buy their first home, who might be experiencing some sort of challenge, whether it's financial or social or whatever. Really educating yourself. I mean, that's how you became educated about this, and then you were able to say, oh, there's an opportunity here to solve for this problem. But and you also lived that problem as well. So I love the fact that you've done this. And sadly that program, I guess, is not currently being offered, but it still does apply to this idea of first-time home buyers. And look, I'm sure everyone listening would love to just do $1 million listings all day, and of course, who wouldn't? But if that isn't your current situation, and you are looking to work with renters that may become buyers, I've always thought that what a great opportunity, even if the person is only renting for the next however many years, being their guide through the rental process and helping them find apartments that are suitable for their needs, but also help get them closer to that goal of home ownership. Do you do rentals as well now, or are you predominantly just on the sales side?
Yeah, my office is almost exclusively sales.
Mm-hmm.
I do have people that reach out to me, or people from the seminar or other teachers that the school that I used to work at. Sometimes they'll reach out to me and say, "Hey, we have a new teacher coming to town," and I'm happy to share my ideas and information with them. But I think you were talking about the idea of listeners, right? Of I'm maybe not many people that listen to the show are former teachers, but to your point of the idea of finding a niche, I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people who are realtors, there are some people who go straight into real estate outside of high school and college, but a lot of people that are in the industry did something previously. So
Yeah.
if you're a former, nurse, firefighter, police officer, teacher, whatever it is, trying to, if you are interested in setting up, a niche and a group of people that you care about, and you really want to help them, trying to find out, what is that group of people, and how do I connect with them, and how do I, share this information with them. The area that I live in, there's many homes that are here that are multi-million-dollar homes. And there's so many realtors here that work with, higher end clients, and they'd like to do a couple of sales a year with some more expensive homes. And for me, I would rather help, you know, 10 teachers buy a $600,000 house than, sell one $6 million house. Cause, I just connect better with teachers. And I think, while I do work with people outside of teachers too, it's easier just to relate. And, you feel something additional when you see somebody getting the keys to their first house, and it's
that they might not have thought was ever a possibility.
exactly. Yeah.
I come from the IT world, in particular around healthcare. I worked at a firm before being in real estate, where I was, t-shirts and shorts and sandals kind of company. And it was a lot of young people. And I was there for many years. And we had about 150 people there, most of which were under 30. Even the owners were just in their early 30s at the time. And it was a kind of a young, hip tech company that did not pay particularly well to younger, right out of college graduates. So most of the workforce was in the probably mid 20s, I would say. And they were compensated. I mean, I don't know everyone's compensation, but they seem to be compensated okay. But they certainly weren't, earning a premium to work there. And I can't remember anyone ever coming into our office and saying, hey, we want to do a seminar about buying a home. It just wasn't even something I would have thought about, because I didn't know it was even an option. And so if you're listening and thinking, well, like Toby was saying, everyone has, not everyone, but a lot of our listeners are going to have either previous careers, or we know people in other careers, and you can talk to if you don't have an opportunity, like what I would do if I were practicing real estate. I mean, I've been doing this long enough to where, no, I think I still would do it today. If I was actually practicing real estate, first call I would make would be to my former company. And I would call every other tech firm that I'm familiar with in the space that we played in. And I would say, hey, I want to help your employees, and this will help possibly stickiness with your company, because Chicago is also a relatively expensive place to live. So, this would be the path to home ownership. Nobody ever did that at the firm I was at. And we had 150 people there. And I guarantee our HR director would have said, that would be awesome. Come in, do a lunch, because it makes her, in this case, would make her look good to the company too, that she's bringing in this value. So I don't want to harp on this, I don't want to step on this too much, but I really think there's a huge lesson here. Whatever your background is, and if you went into real estate, straight, from when you became an adult, and you don't have a particular past, talk to your friends, talk to other clients, and say, hey, do you think there's an opportunity for me to do some education for people in your field? Do you think people would be interested in that? What are the problems they're facing? And then you'll talk to a lender and say, hey, do you have any things to address these problems? So anyway, I think we've made that point, but I am so impressed with you. And we should also mention, by the way, how difficult it is to be a realtor in Monterey, California. Toby was sharing this but before we went live. This is incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible, in an unfortunate way, so to speak. But it is truly remarkable. It is just such a bizarre area of the country, and such a beautiful area. But there are how many homes sold a year, and how many realtors in Monterey?
Yeah. So the year that I started, there was 1,400 home sales and 1,500 licensed realtors. So, I'm not Matt Damon from Good Will Hunting, but if you do that math, it doesn't add up very well.
Yeah.
And especially since, some of the top producers are probably selling, 20 to 30 homes a year. Right. So,
Right.
I got to think that a large portion or percentage of realtors are doing 0 to 1 sale a year. Maybe they represent themselves in purchases, or just work exclusively with friends and family. But yeah, it's a difficult market. There's a lot of people that are looking for, selling the $5-10 million home. So that's an area in a market that's pretty flooded. In here, right? Everybody's trying to connect with those buyers and sellers. So yeah, I think sometimes people get drawn into the idea of, wow, look at the commission that I could earn from a $5 million house, right? And then once they get into it, right? I mean, my first 6 months, I did 1 sale, right? So it's just, it's pretty difficult to get started. And every single realtor, says the things like, "Oh, I love where I live," which I do love Monterey. And, every realtor says I'm the hardest working realtor, which, I am the hardest working realtor here in Monterey. But
Sure.
that's why I tried to find that niche, to your point, is, something that would be separate and differentiate me from other realtors in a market where it's very flooded.
And it's also the market you're going after is also a really smart market, in addition to all of the problems it solves, or sorry, all the solutions that you're offering to solve for these problems. But it's also a market that other realtors are probably ignoring, because of the just sort of the demographics of your area. So it's really just, I'm so impressed with it all the way around, because it's really
Thank you.
going into something that solves a lot of problems in a really productive, positive way. And it's also, there's not as much competition, I'm guessing, in the sense of, teachers probably aren't getting a lot of those, opportunities to learn about home ownership. So wow, I'm so impressed with this. Well, Toby, let's talk. Before we totally get off the idea of the sort of helping teachers thing, I would love just to explain to our audience, what those numbers were. So you said, hey, in your first 6 months, you really did one sale, which I think is still pretty impressive. But once you did your first teacher seminar, can you tell us about sort of what happened after that?
Yeah, so the first 6 months, only did one sale, and was, working nights at a restaurant and a bar, as many realtors do when they're first starting out. And then, yeah, I think around 6 months in might have been when I did the first seminar, with the lender. And the first seminar was very, not very well attended. I think we had 12 RSVP and maybe 2 showed up in the end.
Sure.
And then the second one that I did actually, was the most attended seminar, and we had 70 people that attended.
Wow.
Yeah, we were quite surprised. I don't think we had enough seating, where we where we had initially planned for. So yeah, and so the 6 months after that, I ended up doing 4 sales, which were all
Wow.
as a result of the seminar. And then the year after that, ended up doing, I think 9 sales, which, were a combination. Mostly ended up being from the seminar, but some from, open houses and
Sure.
from referrals and things like that. And then, in 2021, the first, 6, 7 months of the year, I've ended up, 14 sales that are either
Wow.
sold or in contract right now.
Congratulations. And again,
Thank you.
you're in a market where there are a very finite number of homes and an almost infinite number of realtors. So it's the average realtor is doing less than one deal a year. And it's not like, well, there's 40,000 realtors and half of them are just doing it for, no, there's only 1,500, for 1,500 realtors. So it is I mean, that is really incredible. So congratulations on that success. And
Thank
I
you.
just think you just perfectly hit so many of the things that as a marketer, I'm impressed with. But just, you identified problems, you came up with a unique solution, and you went after people that, are largely being ignored, in the realtor space, and you're creating solutions for them. But of course, you don't only work with educators, you work with, all different types of people. But tell us a little bit about sort of how your business has evolved, right? So I know you were doing seminars. Obviously, maybe are you still doing seminars? Because I know that the funding program has changed. But are you still doing? Are seminars still a big part of sort of your presentation to the public?
Yeah, we still have been doing seminars, via Zoom,
Sure.
the last year. So yeah, we still do one about every 3 or 4 months. And I think the thing that I've learned this last year and a half with COVID, is that if you're a realtor, you really have to find multiple sources of generating business, right? Because if you're somebody who almost exclusively relied on open houses or door knocking
Right.
or, a lot of those
That's
in-person things,
changed.
yeah, that you're not, nobody's answering the door during the middle of a global pandemic. So,
Right.
yeah, I think you really just need to diversify what you're doing. I don't think that you should, there's 100 different options that you could do as a realtor to try to generate clients. I don't think that you should, choose too many. I think that you don't want to be, a jack of all trades and a master of none. I would recommend choosing, 3 to 5 sources that are going to be your areas of generating business. And some of it needs to be the in-person, whether it's open houses, door knocking, seminars, whatever the situation might be, for doing in face-to-face. And if you will, maybe the older versions of real estate, if you will, that were kind of the only options in the 1980s or 1990s.
Sure.
But then also trying to diversify and whether it's through social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is that you're choosing to do, I think that you need to pick 3 to 5 that you really enjoy doing, you're passionate about, you're consistent with it. And it's something that, allows for you to, if there is a time when you can't do open houses, well, then you can lean into those other sources. And, I think if you're just only focusing on one area, maybe you're somebody that has a lot of expenses every month. You pay $5,000-$10,000 into Zillow a month, or some of those other sources, right? Like that, it can really put a lot of pressure on a realtor to try to do a certain number of sales every month. And if you're not able to do that, then that's why there's such. Speaking of high turnover with teachers, there's such high turnover when it comes to real estate agents.
Yeah, that is very, very true. It's a tough position, where you have to basically run every part of the business and be a realtor as well. And now there are some firms that help offset some of those responsibilities, but most of the agents I talk to, regardless of the firm that they work at, end up doing 95% of the job themselves, because that's the nature of the job. And client acquisition is arguably the most challenging part for probably all of the listeners, or unless they're really at a high level, and then they have other types of problems. But I think you're right, is picking a few avenues that you're excited and passionate about, and that solves a real problem. And we would all love for the phone to just ring with referrals all day, and certainly once you get to a certain level of your business, hopefully that happens. But until that time, or maybe you never stop prospecting, I'm not sure, but it seems to be that most of the agents I talk to, no matter how successful they are, never stop prospecting. But the idea of really figuring out, how do I make this work, is a challenge. And that's why we're so grateful to have somebody like you on, who really solved a very difficult problem for yourself, in addition to the problem is, okay, this is not a very realtor friendly area. This is a difficult spot to stake your claim and to build a business, because there's just not a whole lot of property to go around, and a lot of competition. And you, in a way, sort of created your own market, which I think is really couldn't be overstated. I think that is a really, really important point, is you decided to create something that solved a whole bunch of problems that were, like we said earlier, kind of maybe being ignored, or just not even really known by the realtor community in your area. So I could not be more impressed with you. And we should also mention, by the way, again, we've talked a lot about Toby's working with educators. He of course works with all sorts of different buyers, sellers, and also can offer some guidance there with renters. But we've also should mention that you have another challenge, and this is not as unique to your area, but certainly, boy, this is really a big number, is that Monterey has appreciated about 30% on average. Was that right? Do I have that right, in the last 12 months?
Yeah, it was close to 30%
Mm,
since last year, and since 2008, homes have gone up about 8 to 10% a year. So, um, yeah, I mean, last year obviously very unique market and interesting real estate market all across the country. Monterey seemed to be an area where there was so many buyers moving from San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles. That were able to work from home and maybe wanted to be a place with some more outdoors activities. And so there was, I think, the last 4 or 5 buyers that I've worked with have been from San Jose, San Francisco, or
sure.
Los Angeles, because it seemed like a lot of the people that were moving to San Francisco and San Jose and doing, cash offers over asking price, 10 offers on a house. We're starting to see that in Monterey.
Mm. Yeah, it makes sense. You have people that now are more mobile because of the work at home experience that so many companies able to hear me. So
Okay. Yeah. No, you're
apologize.
good.
Oh,
No,
there you
you're
are.
good.
We're back. Great.
Yeah.
Well,
The
I was
joys of Zoom, right?
just well, yeah, gosh. So thanks. Toby will just Kate went out for about 10 seconds there. But it's perfect timing because we were actually going to wrap up. But what I would like to let all of our listeners know, whether you're a realtor or in a different profession, obviously, hopefully this has been helpful for you. Our listeners, but also we want to mention that if you are somebody that is wanting to work with the hardest working realtor in Monterey, which is Toby, what is the best way that somebody can reach out to you, whether they're looking to buy, sell, rent, invest? What's the best means of communication with you?
Yeah. So I tried to make it easy. Pretty much everything that I have, whether it's my website, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, it's all just living in Monterey, California. So the website's livinginmontereycalifornia.com. And that's my YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram too. If you want, you can send me an email at Toby, Toby.Fernie, Fernie, at gmail.com. I do, often have clients that are looking in other parts of the country too. I used to live in the Midwest and the East Coast, so quite a few people that I do connect with there for referrals. And so, if you have anybody that's moving to the area, be happy to help them out as best as I can.
Awesome. Well, find Toby on his website. Again, that's livinginmontereycalifornia.com, or you can email him at toby.fernie, and that's Fernie at gmail.com. Sorry, I think I said Tony instead of Toby. Toby.Fernie
Right.
at gmail.com. We'll of course put those in the show notes. Toby, thank you so much. This was such a fun interview for me. Personally, I got really charged up with this particular conversation because of you just such a unique, really such a unique realtor, and we're so grateful to have you on the show. And as your star continues to rise, I am sure we would love to have you back at some point to talk about how things continue to evolve in your business and in your clients' lives. So thank you so much on behalf of the audience. Thank you for your time. We know how busy and it is right now for realtors. So especially somebody like yourself who's done so many sales this year, it's just so impressive. So thank you for that. And also on behalf of Toby and myself, we want to thank all of our listeners and viewers for continuing to support our show. Please tell a friend. Think of one other realtor that could benefit from listening or watching our show and send them a link. Easiest way is just send them to our website, which is keepingitrealpod.com. You can stream every episode we've ever done right there, or just pull up a podcast app, have them search for Keeping It Real, hit the subscribe button. Toby, thank you so much. And we
Pleasure
will,
to be here. Yeah,
yeah,
appreciate you having me, and I'd be happy to come on again anytime.
awesome. And thanks to everyone. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks, Toby.
Thanks.